At this time, I'm going to call the Paris Union High School District Special Board meeting to order at 3:30 p.m. I'm going to ask for a roll call to determine a quorum. Trustee Nellison,
Here.
Trustee Campos,
Here.
Trustee Garcia is absent, Trustee Vallejo,
Here.
and myself, Trustee Stafford, is here. We have established a quorum. We'll move now to 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees, closed session items only. Are there any public comments on closed session items?
No public comments.
Okay. We'll go to 4.1, which is adjourn to closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Nellison, Trustee Vallejo. Please vote electronically. Four point one is 4 in favor, 1 absent. And we are adjourning to closed session at 3:31 p.m.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No, not today.
We'll go to item 6.1 now, revision adoption oral agenda for June 5th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Trustee Vallejo. 7.1, report out of closed session.
No report out of closed session, Mr. Stafford.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bennett. We'll go now to 8.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on non-agendized items. Are there any public comments on non-agendized items?
No public comments this evening, Mr. Stafford.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a public hearing for the Local Control and Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 23-24. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24?
So moved.
Trustee Nellison,
Second.
Trustee Vallejo. The public hearing regarding the Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24 is now open at 5:31 p.m. At this time, we'll have a Educational Services will provide a presentation at this time.
Okay. I didn't catch it, that's how they put it in. Yeah.
Oh,
I want to thank Diane Martin, she's our LCAP lead, as you know, but this lovely presentation, there's lots of information, but you're going to see some beautiful people in here, and I just want you to know, these are not stock photos. Every lovely person
Okay.
you see in this
Manual
entire
vote.
presentation today are our amazing students, and they all look like supermodels in every single picture, and so, it's just such a nice beginning, I wanted to point that out to you as you enjoyed the presentation.
Well, I also wanted, on that is Helene Astorga, our administrative assistant, put it together. So I think she stalks social media. So a lot of these photos came from social media throughout all of the schools. But yeah, we were.
Sounds like Ken took them.
Ken?
Graduation, Ken Womack.
Yeah, there were some others also, but we'll give credit to Ken. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Well, good evening, board members, Superintendent Bennett, and our guests. So this is our annual update. So indulge me just a little bit for our new board members and just kind of a refresher for those of you that have been with us for a while, just to kind of explain what the LCAP is. It is a document that is required by the California Department of Education. So when we receive supplemental concentration dollars, we have to have a plan that addresses goals, actions, and services for our subgroups, English learners, low income, and foster youth. So the document in itself really it addresses all needs for our school, our district, but it really focuses on our EL, our low income, and our foster youth. So it is a required document because we receive these funds in the district. And Candace will go in with her presentation with Mimi on the LCFF, which is the funding formula. So the LCAP has been in existence since 2014, and so it has had many iterations as far as the template. So we've been pretty happy with the template so far. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. It is very technical. It is not the most user-friendly document for our parents. So when we talk about what's in the LCAP, as you go through in your binders, is that it's really separated, and I'm just going to go over just so that you can kind of get an idea of what's in there if you hadn't had an opportunity yet to look at it. It starts off with just general information about the district. There's a section that's called Reflections that we address our successes in the district as well as our identified need. We have our LCAP highlights. We also have our comprehensive support and improvement. So we have 2 schools that are identified in this section that we will provide additional support through this process for the year. Engaging educational partners. Then we have our goals, actions, and services that are listed. And then in the last section, which is my favorite, it's like writing a dissertation. It is increased and improved services, and it's really just a comprehensive overview of all of the goals, actions, and services in that last section. And then it's followed up by the budget tables. So that is what is in our LCAP. And so the way we have structured sharing information with our educational partners and with you is that we typically have a board presentation, which we review our LCAP Goal 2. Because we do our Goal 2 first, is a lot of that data is finalized. It has graduation, our A through G completion. So a lot of that is completed either in June or throughout the summer, so we're able to report that information first. And so most of you that have been with us, we usually start off with our LCAP Goal 2. We also engage through our PAC, which is our Parent Advisory Committee, as well as our DLAC and our district leadership. So part of this process, not only is tonight an informational meeting and open hearing for feedback on the LCAP, is that we also engage our educational partners through this process throughout the year. And then in winter, we present Goal 1, which is the academic goal. And again, we come up here and we share the information with you. We also share it with our PAC, our DLAC, and our district leadership. And then in spring, which is our most recent one, you heard from Mr. Bruff and myself, we shared our LCAP Goal 3. Again, we share it with our PAC and our DLAC and our district leadership. At this time, we have a draft that's ready, which is what you have in possession. And part of what we do is partner with RCOE because they approve our LCAP for its approvability, which means that we have to meet several criteria for it to be approved by the county and then by the state. And so that process is called an RCOE Fast Pass. So we work very closely with the business department because a lot of it is intertwined. And so that's usually about a 5-day process. We submit the report, they give us feedback, and then we make those fixes and changes. And a lot of it is adherence to the template and making sure also that our financial tables are in alignment with what we are submitting to RCOE. So as a matter of fact, today we had our last review at 1 o'clock, so there are some minor changes to what is posted today. A lot of it is just some language, just some cleanup sentences and stuff, but I'll be more than happy to provide you with like a single sheet of the items that were changed than what you're seeing right now. And then, of course, on June 21st, we're hoping that you will approve the LCAP, and then we'll be able to just take that into next year. So that's our process when we're engaging our educational partners. So what I wanted to share is you're all familiar with our 4 goals. We do have a targeted and focused goal, which is our LCAP Goal 5. And I'll go into more detail about that later on in the presentation. But this is a targeted focus goal, and hopefully we'll be able to meet the needs of our students with disabilities, as well as our students that are experiencing homelessness. They did not meet certain criteria and indicators on the dashboard, and so therefore they were identified for differentiated assistance, which means that we need to provide additional services for these student groups. And I'll go into a little bit more detail when we get to that part of the presentation. I have to say, this is one of my favorite photos. It is really cool. It's the Wildcats. Did Ken take that one? No. Oh, okay.
I know, I thought they were professional.
I thought, I know, it was, yeah. But it's really cool. So just to share also, last June, the adopted budget for our LCAP, our LCFF funds, and then our supplemental concentration dollars for last year. And then as we're moving forward into the 23-24 school year, this is our proposed budget moving forward into the next school year. So we'll be, just wanted to kind of give you some frame of reference as we have some increased dollars. So before I turn this over, the way we structured tonight, just to share information, all of you have been part of our board presentations, and so how we're going to present it is we're going to share by goal the successes, that's going to include some of the data points, and then the identified needs, which is going to include some data points. And then our next steps, and then just the budget page. So we're going to do that for all of the 5 goals. And then we also have Dr. McNair, who will be sharing an update also as our equity. So I'm going to bring up, is there any questions before we start and I bring up Mr. Tippy?
One real quick one.
Yeah.
So on and I didn't realize how it all works, but on that slide.
Uh-huh.
So do we know how much was supplemental and concentration?
Yes, the numbers that are on that bottom one.
So they're kind of together, like, so,
Are you asking if the supplemental is part of the LCFF funds in that calculation?
no. Is it, so in Temecula, all we get is supplemental? So
Yes.
that, I know what we get there. So do they separate? We're not a school district that gets concentration, so is there a split of that 24? Is 16 of it?
Oh, what if it's supplemental and what if it's
yes,
concentration?
yes.
I think is that something that we have that'll be in the budget presentation?
It's not, we could.
It's not
Combines it on the calculator, right?
And does it have any extra?
Requirements?
Yeah. Or
Yes.
is it just,
The 15,
it all qualifies and it's just money that you can spend the
Yes.
same way, just it's extra?
I think it's the unduplicated counts for our English learners, low income, and our foster youth, over 55%. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Find what
a separate calculation, and Mimi will go over
Yeah.
The dollar amount per pupil. It's interesting, we've never been asked that question before, how much of that number is supplemental versus concentration, because we spend it,
All the same, and that's what I
Yep.
just didn't know, just because you guys obviously have a higher
And I,
UDP
Yeah.
count. and
understanding
so-
your frame of reference with
Yeah.
Temecula
Yeah.
not qualifying,
Yeah.
but there's a different calculation to derive each of those numbers that then get put in the one pot that you see.
Okay, so then it just becomes one pot.
One
It's
pot
not-
to service-
It's not 2 separate pots, it's just, you meet
Yes.
this, but you guys have a higher percentage over here, so
So
you
we get
an
more.
extra bonus.
Yes,
but it all-
exactly.
Okay, that's what I
Exactly.
wanted, so,
I
okay.
thought that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
Do you want me to leave this here, or is this going to be in your way? Okay. This is the arrow key. It'll move you forward.
Good evening. So we'll go ahead and get started with goal number 1. And one thing that's really important to remember on this, all of the metrics for goal number 1 are based on the 2021-22 school year. So we're looking at data from a year ago. And if you can kind of think back about what we went through in that school year, we were coming back to in-person learning. We had those crazy COVID protocols for quarantines. So a lot of students were out multiple days, teachers were out multiple days. So it was a very challenging year. And looking at this, we're trying to find those successes that we did see. So the first one being our reclassification rate for English learners, moving from EL status to reclassified fluent English proficient students. That was really high at 15.7%. Once again, this is based on the 2021-22 school year. Our LP calculation that looks at the LPAC test scores was okay. There were slight improvements from the 18-19 school year, but with this high of a reclassification rate, that was really good news, something to look at. Our current reclassification rates are a little bit higher for the 2022-23 school year, at about 19% is what we're estimating right now. So that was a little bit of good news. For our ELA and math scores, our Asian and Filipino subgroups scored a status of high. for ELA, and then the 2 or more races were a medium status. And then for math, the Asian and Filipino subgroups scored in the medium status. Also, our special ed team had a focus on the extended school year, so helping our students get those needed credits that they needed to make up from the distance learning years was a really big success. And then also catching them up on those needed skills for reading, math, and then also the emotional support as well. For our identified needs, these are the dashboard statuses for both ELA and math. You can see here, with the exception of those subgroups mentioned previously, all of the statuses were in either the low or the very low categories. So once again, looking at data from the 21-22 school year, we're getting results for this school year right now, so we don't have those just yet, but we're hoping for much better results now that we're kind of back into a normal instructional routine. For the LP status, this is once again looking at our EL subgroup. We did a little bit better than previously at 51.1%. So we're on track of meeting that LP goal for our EL students. The number of students, we get credit for students that move up a level or score or maintain at the level 4 for that category. So the overall was 51.1%, and it's broken down by looking at students that move up a level, 49.8, or students that maintain a level 4 at 1.3. You might look at that number of 1.3 and think, how come only 1.3% of our students maintain a level 4? Ideally, we don't want them to maintain a level 4 because once they hit the level 4 on the LPAC assessment, that's the main requirement for reclassification. So once they hit that, the idea is to make sure they meet the ELA requirement, the teacher recommendation, parent consultation, and then we're able to reclassify them to now an RFEP student. So that's why that number is a little bit low. These are the educational focuses that we have for looking into the next school year. So we're going to continue focusing on mental health and those student interventions. We have professional development for integrated ELD, and literacy across the content areas. Big idea there is that every teacher, English, math, science, social studies, PE, we're all teachers of English language development and literacy, so providing that ongoing professional development. Along those lines, we have academic coaches to support both ELA and ELD, and that does extend into all the different content areas as well. Another focus, getting back to normal, is implementation and administration of the interim assessment blocks. So those are assessments from the Smarter Balance Consortium system, that smaller chunks of assessments that get students ready for those summative assessments that they take at the end of the year. And then teachers are able to administer those tests, 100% alignment to the summative test, and then analyze the data, identify strengths and weaknesses, and then focus their interventions on student needs. And then also incorporated in that, the 6-week data meetings for all grade level PLC teams to monitor those student performance throughout the school year. And then these are the budget expenditures for goal number 1. So those high priority items that are included in in goal number 1. And I already phoned a friend for some help.
So this is kind of, I think all of you received our, the one pager that has both the 22 and 23 budget. So this just kind of, for us, what we do is we identify it by action within the goal. So that's why you see the 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 4, so on. And so that just kind of encapsulates just, how the dollars are being spent this year and how we're anticipating how we're going to spend those next year. Is there any questions on goal 1 for any?
And they have that hard copy of the so it's a little hard to see.
Yeah.
Can you go over the, math support sections, okay, I wasn't reading that. Okay.
And if you find that you have more questions after tonight,
yeah,
because I know.
I'll mark it.
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to any one of us to just kind of go over how that's, how we're utilizing those line items.
Or I guess, can you just briefly define the math support sections at the 3 high schools?
So those are the, I don't know if they're calling restart or, if the students are not progressing in Algebra 1, tell me
If
if
you
I'm.
fail first semester
Yeah.
and you need to restart second semester, it creates an additional section that we may have to have. Paris is doing something kind of innovative, we're on their trimester kind of approach. They've been really successful at getting kids caught up and remediated and passing.
So now, are they taking an extra math class in their schedule, or?
You would continue on with second semester and possibly retake first semester, so you stay on track for the total.
At the same time.
But
You
it's-
do it at the same time.
You do it at the same time.
So you have semester one twice, essentially.
So it's sometimes easier to think of it like a foreign language. Let's say you struggled in Spanish, first semester. Well, second semester builds on that, so if you failed it, you could retake first semester while you took second semester and hopefully be getting some of that background as you take the subsequent semester.
So now, is that calculated into their schedule, or is it something that's
Yeah, they
after
have-
school, or?
They would have to lose an elective second semester, but usually the biggest hurdle for any of our students to graduation is the Algebra 1 class. So that's a sacrifice that has to be made to get them across that important hurdle.
Now, is it with the primary teacher, their same teacher that's teaching both?
No, sometimes you'll have a restart with a different teacher, and sometimes that's more effective in that, you hear the same thing in a different way from a different person. It could be, it's not always a different person, but normally it is.
And I'll tell you why I asked the question and why the concern. Number one, obviously it's a student that's struggling in math. Now they're being asked to double their load of a subject that they already struggle in. And then you mix in the fact, and I know how it works teaching-wise, it's very difficult to collaborate with a teacher who's teaching something else because they're moving on. And so, because we've done this before at the middle school level, and the students they struggle big time because it's an overload of something they already struggle with. And then you don't know, unless these two teachers are collaborating and they're saying, hey, so you're working on fractions, well, but I'm doing this over here, that student has to work with two different concepts simultaneously. And I just, please clarify how they make it work.
So we ran, one of the reasons we're doing a new math diagnostic next year, the Star Renaissance Math Diagnostic, because it gives us a really prescriptive list of areas, like maybe you don't get fractions, or you don't get ratios, or you don't. So that is one exciting thing that's coming next year. You've asked a pretty big philosophical question, I think, and Julie Zero can help me, that we did this study the year before COVID, or maybe it was 2 years. I was director at the time, but under Dr. Newman, they looked at different models of this. If you didn't take the 2 semesters, second semester, and you just retook first semester, but then there was a domino effect where it messed up your schedule and by graduation. And there was another way they did it where you wouldn't take second semester, but then you had like a whole semester off of math, and they found the learning gap for that created, when you retake the whole year next year, that was the actual, failure rate was actually higher. So you pointed out some really accurate concerns, but it's almost like that old Churchill quote, democracy is the worst system except for all the others. This is kind of the worst approach except for all the others, if that makes sense. That it's not great, but it's kind of the best we've found to get kids over.
And so.
Does that make sense, though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with seniors at this point only?
No, hopefully this is an early intervention with sophomores, because you don't want them to do this Algebra 1 usually happens in freshman year, so it could be freshmen or sophomores, and we want them to get this behind them, this hurdle behind them before they reach their junior year.
But is it to meet the A through G requirement, or I guess so, obviously that student, if they're seniors, I can understand, hey, you gotta cram, we, help you with the skills to get out, but,
So ideally, you want them to
Freshmen.
do it freshman and sophomore, so they can get that second year or third year of math in to be A through G compliant.
And they have a 3-year math requirement, so algebra is the biggest hurdle. We have to get them as soon as possible through algebra in order to get them to 3 years of math. Another thing that they're doing is within their PLC teams, they're doing a lot with standards-based grading. So oftentimes, we do have teams that are collaborating very well in regards to when students don't do well, where they'll actually share kids. So a group of kids that maybe didn't do very well on a test, they're gonna go with one teacher, and the group of kids that did really well go with another teacher, and they actually share kids, and then give opportunities for kids to retake tests based on the standards on that test. So rather than that's been really helpful because they're identifying the struggling standards for students. And when they're repeating stuff, they're addressing just the standards that the kids are struggling in, not everything, so that they're not necessarily having to repeat everything within that semester. It's
Kind of a
really,
mastery learning
it's
approach.
really looking at it by standard.
And so why not remediate it through like summer school?
We do.
We do, yeah.
So it's this plus,
Well, it depends on if they're taking algebra during the school year, for instance, if they retake semester 1 during second semester, during summer school, they would take second semester of algebra so that they can go into geometry when they come back that next school year.
That's if they pass
If
the
they
first
pass it.
semester, the second time around.
Sometimes they pass that first semester because it's the second time.
Yeah.
And then they fail.
The second semester, so they have to take it in summer.
So we
yeah.
kind of have a plan and then a redundancy plan and then it's trying to create safety net after safety net to hopefully get them through freshman, sophomore to get that second and third year in a B, A through G.
so now, in that sense, it's to get them to Algebra 2, or is it just to get them?
Geometry, algebra 2.
Well,
whatever
that's
the
obviously to get, the A through G through college, but what if they're not college bound? So I guess my question is, okay, let's just say that they're a student who's struggling, school maybe not be their best thing, but are there other options to just go with consumer math type stuff where they're saying, hey, you know what, my plan isn't to be this, or go there, but if it's the 3-year requirement that we're looking at, obviously them just being proficient in the basics and not necessarily the stuff that they might never use that many of us don't use anymore.
One thing, Mr. Campos, they have to pass Algebra 1 to graduate from high school. That's a requirement for high school graduation. Getting- For the state.
He's a math teacher, but we've always wondered why that's the only class that you have to pass, well, government as well, but that's.
But you have to pass Algebra 1 too.
Algebra 1, and then once they do that, then what?
We would move on to geometry at that point.
No,
We-
no,
we-
I understand that path,
we-
but
we
what
allow-
if they don't? What if it's just to graduate and they're, they struggle with algebra to their junior year, but they pass it their junior year?
Well, they could still graduate and not be A to G compliant.
Right.
They-
So then they would
we do-
have, they would
for-
have.
For
they can do
seniors, we do
consumer
have
math.
those kind of classes. We have consumer math.
Yeah.
We have some tech math and some other classes that aren't as rigorous as geometry, algebra 2. So if we see they're not gonna make A through G, we have those available for them in their senior year to get the math credits.
Normally, you don't see them just if they're not A through G failing just that math component, that if it's a student like you've described, they're looking at CTE classes or other kinds of, and they've kind of conceded the A through G, and they're looking at a more traditional, or a less traditional college path and more of a CTE path. So we might alter their scheduled courses based on listening to them and their career aspirations at that point, if they're the type of student you described.
Well, and I'm just worried, or not worried, but curious, if that's part of the student's decision, the parent's decision, because if, let's just say, now we're doubling up, we took away their sophomores, I can understand if it's seniors, but you just took away an elective, which what if that elective was really important to them at that point?
One thing that makes it great here is that we made that big conversion to a 7-period
Yeah.
day, so it softens that blow. It's a much rougher blow in other districts that don't, and we're unique in that 7-period day for the most part. So that does soften, so we always want, for the reasons you're saying, the kid to have a couple of
Yeah.
electives, it's the fun part of your day.
Right, okay.
So you're raising all the good questions, there is not a perfect answer, that
Right.
this is a struggle to
Yeah.
kind of find your.
But, yeah, and now I know at least where the money's being spent, so yeah,
They're all really good questions.
got it, thank you.
And you guys also do this for Pinnacotti too, right? Or just high school with the second math class?
Just high school.
Just high school. Oh, okay.
And not all of them. Or is Liberty not on here just because of the new, we don't have that data?
Yeah.
Right.
So next year they'll be added.
If they
Well,
need
to answer your
that,
question,
yep,
for
if they need
Middle
it.
school, they'll try to do diagnostics and look at learning gaps and try to, like Ms. Zero said, in the first semester, you were really struggling with factoring or ratios or graphing. Well, we might try to revisit those in some way. In fact, that's what the meeting was with, Pennacotta last week. And we actually have some people coming into the county to use the math diagnostic to try to do that more prescriptive reteaching next year, for all the reasons you're saying. To get them ready so they don't have to do this
In high
terrible
school.
thing that we're talking about or avoid as people avoid as possible.
Now,
So
is
that's a
there,
big part of it too.
is there, because now she actually triggered another question or thought. So is there a, because we were talking about a sophomore. So what math would they have, so if that's the sophomore who's struggling and now has to get that class, Algebra 1 out of the way, and then hopefully if they want to go A through G, that's fine. What were they taking in ninth grade?
They would have taken algebra, almost everyone takes algebra 1, or everyone does take algebra 1 in ninth grade, unless you pass that in the 8th grade, and then you could go into
take
geometry.
If you
But
qualify.
those are
you go
usually
Well,
our
yeah, no, so I
accelerated
guess
students
I'm
who
more
are
concentrated on
qualified.
the kid who struggles in math. So let's just say the kid maybe hasn't, really solidified sixth grade math, which is foundational. You don't get that. Good luck with algebra. So do they just, in freshmen, they just start in algebra? There's no remedial math. There's nothing there that if they weren't cutting the mustard in middle school, they might have failed pre-algebra or whatever, and now they're thrown into that. They might fail, and then the next year, they might struggle first semester. So now they've had 3 semesters of struggle, and then now going into the 4th, because we're looking at A through G, we're gonna add another math class on top of that.
That was a shift that happened, I would say industry-wide, you jump in here, around, 6, 7, 8 years ago maybe, where they, not us, but statewide, they did studies that if you retook in your freshman year, like an algebra readiness class, it was called algebra readiness.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, that if you failed that, it had the same failure rate as if you took the more rigorous algebra 1, and the kids actually did better if they went into the more rigorous algebra 1.
Because they saw it the first time around.
Yeah, so
and
it
then-
was a long
a little more
longitudinal
familiar.
study on a statewide level, and it might have been even national, that, and industry-wide, the shift was made. Algebra 1 is it. It's kind of a throw them in the deep end, and you gotta get them, but be with them and help them swim, but it doesn't really help to go into the shallow end. They still sort of drown at the same or greater rate.
Yeah, we do.
And then that accomplishes the goal that he was mentioning
Correct.
about the, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
So that at least, okay.
A lot of this has to do with research and,
Yeah.
and the industry standards and knowing what best practices are. But you asked like a doctoral level question that was somebody posed in a big study, and then as an industry responded and got it.
We do have another option, though, for students that are on an IEP. We do have an algebra class that's actually first semester over the course of 1 year and second semester over the course of the second year. So they do an AB, algebra A
Okay, yeah,
and B.
okay.
But those usually diploma track, or, diploma track, not A through G.
Yeah.
Right.
And that way you're taking algebra 1 over 2 years.
Yeah,
as you
and they
said.
focus on the essential standards.
And we did all that new scope and sequencing last year and mapped that out with Mr. Alzabaty, the Director of Special Education. Sorry, you got the whole team.
I know.
The whole team answered on that one.
Are we okay to move on to?
Yes.
You can always come back and ask more questions. Okay, Julie?
All right. All right, well, I get to talk to you about Goal 2. This is our preparing students for college and career readiness. So when we look at the successes that we had in Goal 2, we continue to remain pretty stable with our graduation rate, and that really is tied to what we talked about just a minute ago with the 7-period day, as well as credit recovery programs that we're using between special ed, Edmentum, which is our online program, as well as some of the interventions that our school sites have done to remediate. And so we saw success in all of our subgroups except for our special ed population and our white population that had a slight decrease. But overall, our graduation rate has recovered back to what it was in 2019-20, the year of COVID. So we're starting to bounce back, and our target is to make sure our graduation rate is between 92 and 94% at all times. As far as looking at our CTE pathways, we continue to increase those CTE pathways. So obviously, because Liberty is a pathway school, we're going to continue to have more pathways offered, which means more CTE teachers. But we did see an increase in CTE pathway completers as a district by 0.8%. So we want to see that start to grow a little bit more. And as Liberty has their senior year next year, we will see a lot more completers on that pathway. And then looking at our comprehensive counseling programs, this is really to support making sure our counselors are working with our students with A to G, graduation rate, CTE pathways. And so this year we really focused a lot of attention on creating a comprehensive district plan. We worked with the RCOE to really start looking at some of our practices to continue to improve some of that data. And it really helped us kind of align district-wide what our standards were and how we were measuring things, so consistent metrics. Sometimes one school looked at on track with 2 classes off, where another school, you couldn't be off any courses, and they were considered on track for A to G, so really trying to develop that comprehensive plan. And then the final category is looking at the college and career readiness. Our FAFSA completion was over 80%. Our goal, obviously, is to have every senior complete the FAFSA, but we do have a few students that do opt out, but now it is a state requirement, which the state still allows for there to be an opt-out option as well. Currently, right now, Heritage is in the top 10 in the state for FAFSA completion for this school year. This is last year's data. Again, this is 21-22. Paris High, I believe, is at 99% the last I checked, so they have that's their submitted students. CMI is over 100%, and Paloma is at 88%, and they're also, I believe, in the top 10 in the state for their size of school. So we've definitely done a lot of work making sure our parents are educated as far as the importance of that. And then we had increased our AP pass rate last year by 4%, and that was in all of our subgroups. So every single one of our subgroups showed an improvement in those AP pass rates. And then the district-wide college and career readiness, this is something that we continue to really hone our skills in when we look at that, those different opportunities, kickoff to college, our college fair, as well as career presentations, really getting a lot more presentations from pathways so that our students see the options are not necessarily just going to college, but also those career pathways. Oops. Here's where we had some of our challenges. When we look at the graduation rate, we did see a decrease in our special ed population by 4%. We also saw a slight decrease of 0.8% in our white population. And then overall, we saw a decrease in our A to G completion for all of our student groups. One thing I want to add, though, is both graduation rate and A to G, before this year, they actually separated out Paris Lake and Scholar Plus because those were alternative ed programs. After this year, they went back to the old calculation where it has all of the schools calculated together. So that is one of the reasons why we saw a significant drop in both of the A to G completion rate, was because usually at Paris Lake, we have very few students that meet the A to G requirements. And then looking at our CTE pathways, one thing that we want to get better at is how we collect the data, making sure that all of our SIS teams are trained properly, because there is a specific sequence that it has to be put into the system, as well as the concentrators and the completers and what that looks like, making sure that all of our counselors are trained. We have a lot of new counselors. That was one of our other challenges this year. Heritage had 3 new counselors to their team this year. 2 of them were brand new counselors, hadn't been counselors before, so making sure that we're providing lots of support for those teams. And then we had just a slight decrease in average participation. I think a lot of that just comes from coming back from COVID and still that recruitment process, as well as having a new coordinator over at one of our school sites. So. And then moving forward, what we want to kind of focus on as we move into next year is just that continued communication with our educational partners. We work really closely with MSJC with our dual enrollment and our concurrent enrollment programs. We have a lot of students that get access to college classes while they're in high school. Last year, we did a presentation, and we had over 10,000 courses completed that were college classes We saved parents almost $500,000 in tuition costs because of our offerings. As far as where we land within our county, we're only second to Marietta as far as the most dual enrollment classes provided. So we're pretty proud of that program, and our kids are getting lots of opportunities to get college credits before they graduate. And then Liberty being the pathway school, many of their classes are articulated, which means they also get college credit for those as well. So lots of opportunities, and so we want to continue to build on that. We want to provide workshops for parents. That's one of the things that the Aspire team did this year is they really marketed the college enrollment and career opportunity process with the college so that parents could see that direct correlation to how much money they could save if their students were participating in those classes. And again, just focusing really on special ed collaboration with our gen ed teachers, looking at that graduation rate. We want to make sure that there's good collaboration between those teachers to help support our special ed population. We also want to make sure that we're really working with our SIS teams to do the training for the pathway sequencing, as well as with our new counselors, giving them a little bit more training and one-on-one support to make sure that we see those pathway completers at the end of their pathway, whether it's 2 years, two-year course pathway or a 3-year course pathway. And then just as far as continuing to hit those AVID numbers that we like to see, continuing to train our new coordinators and taking our teams to the Summer Institute. And then this year, after this year, we'll have a college and career readiness indicator again. That's from the California dashboard, which we haven't had for the last 2 years. So really wanting to make sure that all of our teams of counselors as well as our teachers really understand the college and career readiness indicator and what components get our students to be approaching or prepared. We really want to see our students leaving with as much preparedness as possible when they graduate from high school. Yes.
That was in Princess Choice class. Yeah.
I don't know what year that was from.
Yeah, there's you doing math with some kids there. Still got the chops.
And I can't. And this is just the review of the expenditures for our Goal 2. Is there any questions I can answer for
The
you?
tutors, obviously no expense. High school students, who are the tutors?
The AVID tutors?
Yeah.
Those are hired through the district and they're usually enrolled in college.
Okay.
So we don't have, like peer tutoring, we don't have our
We don't
senior
pay.
AVID, we don't pay.
We have peer tutors, but we don't
don't pay
pay
them.
our peer tutors.
So the AVID tutor budget there that you see are all college students that are coming. Some of them are alumni that, graduated from the schools that are coming back to tutor that have been in the AVID program.
And so there's no AVID teachers doing any of the tutoring, or is it just because above and beyond the workday or the school hours?
So AVID there's 2 tutoring days a week that the tutors come out and they facilitate working with students on various problems that during class time. So that, so they're scheduled 2 days a week. Yes.
It's part of the AVID program. They're required to have tutorials twice a week. So on those days, the tutors actually run the groups, and they break them down into 4 or 5 groups. A lot of it is focused around math, and they work with the individual student groups on questions that they have.
Thank you.
Any more questions before we move on to 3? All right.
3's a safe and productive learning environment, as you know, and we may go through this one a little bit quickly because we gave you a whole presentation on this. So if some of this seems repetitive, you've heard this recently, it's because you just heard it recently, but we have to go through all of them today. So as we've talked about in the past, they worked on tiers of intervention this year. They looked at some incentive programs. We were 100% Williams compliant. And we've presented to you many times, so I won't go in great depth on the wellness centers, but you probably remember 2 or 3 meetings ago, we had all our amazing and dedicated social workers up here, and you heard some of those numbers, like 17,000 visits this year, and then we've broken it down by, but one that's particularly powerful, it doesn't seem like a very huge number, 2% received individual counseling. Individual counseling in this case means individual therapy. that our district has never had that before. This is actual therapy. And so that top 2% are kids that were really struggling. So we're very proud of that last number. Ms. Fahey.
I forgot if this was mentioned earlier, but for the therapy, is there like how many sessions is it like free until they have to
It'll
go?
depend on the need.
Oh,
So, say you're a student and you come into the wellness center and you're just feeling some anxiety. They might work with you that day. That's not really therapy. Give you some breathing techniques and help you and say, check in with us if you're still struggling. But if you're coming in regularly and then they build a relationship with you and we find out perhaps you're a cutter, well, that's a very serious mental ailment that would involve multiple sessions. And then Mr. Alzabadi would be a better person to answer that you would, I don't know how many sessions, and for some person, maybe they really respond to therapy, and it's a few, I'm guessing. And for some, it's ongoing, and we might support you for a very long time, but I'll defer to my therapist expert here.
So we start off with between 4 to 6 sessions, and that's really a kind of a start point in relation to what we're trying to achieve, developing the coping skills, anger management skills. What are the core that we're trying to achieve, the self-advocacy piece of it, right? If we're noticing that those students aren't receiving that benefit piece, then we go back to the SST and we start looking at our child find obligation. And so the therapy still continues. So it's not like an HMO. We don't just go, hey, 8 sessions, sorry, it didn't work, you're done. We keep going, and at that point, either myself, Mr. Stevens comes in and we provide technical support at that point, and we start looking at other angles in relation to what's the roadblock that we're getting to so that we can bypass.
Or we might do linkage services where
And
we work
linkage.
with their HMO.
Yep.
And you remember you approved Care Solace, and Care Solace has been a great thing for our families to get additional levels of service on their own as well. So there's multiple tiers and layers there, and his answer was way better than mine, but so great we have all these experts in-house. Next one. So of course, identified needs that next year, as you know, we're doing an alternative suspension program that's been traditionally at the middle school, Pinacati, and at Paris High School, but it will be at every school next year. We will have a certificated special ed teacher in each of those. And then we've talked to you quite a few times about the wraparound services. And then, of course, we have to have a dedicated push, dedicated push to chronic absenteeism for next year. But the things to come, again, you've heard of these, the additional program specialists, the behavior specialists, the drug counselors, and if you remember that data point we gave you in the extended, that there was a 27% jump in drug usage since our kids, mostly vaping, marijuana vaping. And we used to have a person who would come once a week and do a group. Now it's gonna be much more substantial. Perhaps first time you get caught doing that, you would get a group session. If we catch you a second time, we really feel you're then self-medicating and maybe something else, and you get other services as well as that. Next year, with a dedicated drug specialist, you might be in a one-on-one meeting, and then you might, if you get caught a third time, more intensive. Whereas in the old days, we'd just say, oh, second drug offense, suspend you and send you to the county. It's really not a therapeutic and whole child approach. We feel like this is more equitable in meeting kids where their pain is and providing services. So you've heard of that before, but we're very proud of all that coming. And of course, we have to create synergy between all of these folks with all of these new services. How do they all dance and interwork in a wraparound team together? And we're actually taking our assistant principals, our principals, to the Cheech Museum on the 13th to do a training with them. Dr. McNair is leading off with some equity activities, and then we're spending a whole day in excitement of planning next year. So we're super, super excited about all of that. And then it all costs a lot of money. Oh, was there a question? I'm sorry.
No.
Ms. Faye.
No.
You
'Cause-
pointed, I thought I
Well,
missed
because
it.
you're using your laptop and.
Oh,
we're
next
just-
one, sorry,
No,
I'm
it's
just chugging
we're-
along here.
We're
Yeah, yeah.
one step ahead of you.
Yep,
Yep.
okay. So it all costs a lot of money, and then Diane makes sure, everything gets paid, so.
That is really funny, Bob. Anyway, this is our budget sheet for our Goal 3. If you have any questions there or anything about Goal 3.
Oh, and we have Loma Linda interns as well next year, we're really excited about. It was just whispered in my ear. We have students getting their masters in social work, and they'll be doing, that was a great partnership, Mr. Alzabades. So we'll be getting lots of free labor next year, and young people really, or not always young, but people finishing their degrees and excited to work with our young people.
Just definition of the community engagement specialist, and you've probably mentioned it, and I just don't recall.
Yes, that's Diane's, let her speak to that, community
Yeah,
engagement specialist.
that's Sonia, or is it does it say, I can't even read it, this.
Here, you can use mine. Want me to bump it up for you?
No, I got,
It's
let's see.
130 and it's increasing to 140. 4.3.
Because I,
Oh, wait, hold on.
yeah, I think that's 4. 'Cause I was getting
goodness.
I think that's goal 4, but on 3, we
My
do
bad.
have community
Yeah, goal 4
liaisons.
is parent outreach.
Yeah.
That's under.
Scared me, I'm like going, oh,
I was like, wait a
I-
minute.
Jumped ahead just a
Yeah,
little
no,
bit.
you,
jumped ahead a
that's
little
okay, I'm like going,
God,
but
this
you
was
caught
page
that
2 of
one.
it, yeah.
The community liaisons assist in pupil services with the attendance. They're making phone calls, home visits, and such.
Yep.
That particular one.
And that's a good segue to goal 4.
Oh, any other questions regarding goal 3? Okay. So on to goal 4. It's my favorite one. As you know, we shared a lot of information with you at the last board meeting. We had the ladies up here, just kind of shared a lot of the data and kind of where we are. So some of our successes this last year, I think, were very evident in our increase in our parent participation, obviously coming off of COVID and, everything being done virtually. We've really seen a huge uptick in engagement and participation in many of the events and activities across the district. Of course, in our parent survey, which we will be able to report back some of that data in the fall when we start off the year. So that was, we got parent survey information as well as staff survey information. We'll be able to present some of their feedback at our next report out in the fall. Of course, we've utilized social media, as we shared last time at the board meeting. We use the platforms to the best of our ability. We post everything, share everything using our social media platform. So we've seen an uptick in followers. And I think we'll probably, for us, look at some more analytics, that how long they're staying on the site, the type of information. So we're really just trying to utilize that communication piece. We've hired additional community liaisons because 2 of them were moved over to pupil services, so we backfilled those. That came out of here. A big part of our success, I believe, is that we centralized our liaisons, so they all work out of the district office, but they are assigned schools, and they have locations and offices and space there. They work very closely with the leadership team in coordinating their parent events and activities. We're conducting administrative meetings now to kind of talk about what worked this last year, kind of what we want to change and what we want to focus on for next year as well. We're very proud of those of you that attended the Peli. We have that gala at the end of the year. We get to recognize our parent volunteers and our business partners. So we will continue that work moving forward. Again, we offer a plethora of workshops and trainings for our parents. Not only do we hold them in-house, but we also take them to like CABE. CABE is one of them, and then National Parent Institute. Some of the local ones. We have great partnerships with the City of Paris and Menifee, so we engage and work with them, whether it's through the Color Fun Run or the Health Fair. We have the Job Shadow, so there's a lot of things that we collaborate on with both cities, so we're very excited about that. And again, I think as we shared, not only do we use the social media platforms, but we do have internal information systems like Blackboard, Peachjar, that we use to disseminate information with our parents. Some of the things a few of the things that we want to work on for next year is that we really want to improve the communication between staff and parents. Before COVID, we had a parent panel, and a lot of the feedback that we got from our parents was that they wanted to improve or have strategies to improve communication with the teachers, with their child's teachers. So what we're going to do is create a district-level ATP team like we do at the site, and we're going to focus on improving communication skills between parents and staff. So that'll be something that we're going to focus on for this next year. Of course, we would like to continue to increase different types of trainings and workshops. We survey our parents. That'll be part of our feedback that we'll get. A lot of it has been fentanyl, drug use, vaping, as Bob had shared, marijuana use, a lot of those things parents are very interested in hearing more about. So we'll continue to provide those workshops and trainings for our parents as well. And of course, I think just to the last point, we're currently meeting with our administrative staff and the leadership team at the schools just to kind of determine how this year went and some focus areas for next year as well. It's kind of moving, I kind of merged a few of those things together. Ones that I did not mention, our goal is to work with our EL newcomer families. We'll be working with Mr. Tippy, so we've already got a parent summit lined up for Paris High School. So we'll be able to reach out to our families who are new to our school and our district and be able to provide them all the resources that they need to be successful and to transition into school here. Would like to attend the National Family Engagement Conference. This is a great training for our community liaisons, and so we'll be bringing some information to you regarding that as well. A focus for us next year is probably Candace might touch on her presentation, and I know that she has before, is student attendance. And so part of our Pele goal for district-wide as well as site level is we're going to focus on increasing student attendance. And we will have strategy sessions on how best to do that, to work with parents to be able to get their kids to school. And of course, all of the back end as far as making sure that we're documenting attendance and truancies and clearing attendance and such. So those will be some focus areas for us moving into next year. And this is our budget for our LCAP Goal 4. So it includes our community liaisons and community engagement specialists, and then the trainings if we take parents. A lot of the stuff that you see, the canopies and the resources, all of that is built into here. Any questions? Okay. Let me just continue. So this is our focus goal 5. So we are in what we call differentiated assistance. This is a partnership with Riverside County Office of Ed. So there's two student groups, as I mentioned earlier, students with disabilities and students that are experiencing homelessness. So they scored very low in chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, ELA, and math. And I'll just click. This is the data. I don't want to go into all of the details, but it kind of just has a comparison with all students versus those two particular subgroups. So what that means is that we're not getting any extra money to provide support for them, but we are getting support from Riverside County Office of Ed to be able to address and help us build a plan to be able to improve these student groups in all of these different areas. So much of what you heard tonight, whether it's through our wraparound services, through efforts for, with Charles and Julie for goals 1 and 2, all of these we know are going to have an impact. But because they scored low in those different areas, they are now what we call a focused LCAP goal. So if we're able to bring them up, then you won't see this goal moving forward in the future. And that's, of course, our mission, is to be able to support these student groups moving forward. And the second bullet, this is just our favorite picture ever. I don't think we'll ever stop using it. I know, right? So we're, in order to address some of those needs is really to use the wraparound services as Bob was mentioning, and we had shared all year with the additional staff that is coming aboard. We will continue to provide, part of that process is really looking at those student groups and utilizing an individualized academic plan and support plan to be able to address the academic portion, and the wraparound services will be able to identify those behavior issues in those different subgroups moving forward. So we'll be reporting out the data moving forward as we go into the fall again in that cycle. We'll be addressing these particular subgroups moving forward for Goal 5. So let me go back. There is no budget for this. It's just going to be rolled into our LCAP supplemental concentration dollars that are already exist in the plan. Any questions on this one? All right, I'd like to bring up Dr. Manair, and she is going to, well, that was quick. You'd have to go too far. And she's going to kind of bring us up to speed on equity and caring.
She didn't see that I moved my seat. So, good evening. So I just presented last month, and so during the presentation, you know that part of the success for this past year is that they hired me, and I'm so excited to be here. So, I didn't count the number of days this time, but since January, I have been focusing on ensuring that there's the connection between all of the goals. And as I stated last month, all of the presentations are equity presentations because we want to ensure that through all the LCAP goals that we are providing equitable access to all of our educational partners. And so this year, I've been working with culture clubs, primarily in revitalizing the connection between the African American Parent Advisory Council and the Black Student Union. We have restarted the District African American Parent Advisory Council, in which we had over 70 in attendance. And this year, we have been working on the equity and ethnic studies curriculum just to ensure that we have a cohesive plan moving forward and that we're looking at all of the LCAP goals as well. The next few slides are slides again from last month's presentation when I reviewed the 9 strategies that also coincide with our board policy 0415 that speaks of what we believe as far as equity. And so each of these strategies go into basically what we've been talking about all night, is that we want to ensure that our students have equitable access to services, to the dollars, and then also that we're looking at our student groups that are not performing as well as other student groups, and then also setting goals to ensure that they are able to be successful in whatever that they are engaging in. And so these are the first 3 strategies. The next 3 strategies focus on the multi-tiered systems of support, which we've been talking about, wellness centers, the connections between RCOE and outside services. So you see it's a lot of repetition of what our LCAP is all about. This next slide also goes into human resources, but then it ends with strategy 9, which is equity audits. And as I spoke last month, part of this strategy is ensuring that there is a program evaluation that is ensuring that we are achieving those academic outcomes and performance indicators for our students at all levels. And then lastly, what's coming. In this slide, you can see the picture of the most recent superintendent's listening session, which was actually held last week. I'm not sure what was happening in that second picture. As you see, I have my hand on my hip. It must have been something really good. And so we were meeting with students from all of our school sites, and it was a very productive day. And right now, I am disaggregating the data from that superintendent's listening session because we want to ensure that as we're preparing to draft our equity blueprint, that our student voices are heard, and that we're using the culture and climate surveys to really inform our practices for our LCAP, but also as we move into novel committee adoptions, ethnic studies adoptions, and really ensuring that our parents know what's going on, we need to listen to the voices of all. And so that's what's to come in equity. Any questions for me? No? All righty.
Okay, so next steps moving forward. So this is a public hearing, so this is really just for information. And of course, we would elicit and would welcome any feedback that you have. We would be proposing, there will be some minor adjustments based on our feedback. As I shared at 1 o'clock, we had another debrief, just some minor adjustments to the LCAP that was posted that you have a copy of. And I'll be more than happy to share where those adjustments and items were. I'll just give you like a 1-page cheat sheet so you can just don't have to flip through everything because the county provides us with that information as well. So there'll be some minor adjustments and updates, just some language stuff. So then on June 21st, we won't be presenting again. It'll just be for approval. So, but it is open for comment now until the time that we have to post it, 72 hours in advance for any additional input. So if you have anything that you would like to share with us or to consider, please let us know. But our goal is that we will move forward and not hearing any additional information. We'll make the adjustments that the county had recommended and then just send that back to you for approval on June 21st. Did you have a question? You look like you were getting ready.
So, okay, I have a couple of questions, and if you guys can guide me. So, a few weeks ago, when we did the shadowing for the classified employees, I was with the attendance specialist, Marlene Hernandez.
Oh,
Super nice. All the ladies were amazing, and they were telling me everything that they do, and it's a lot.
yes.
I was like, wow, like I give them huge props for it. But what I was thinking of is, I was asking Marlene, like, what else do we need to do? Because that's where And she said like it would be nice to have another attendance specialist, but she also said if we can have another attendance clerk at a high school, because she said the problem is they need more people to make phone calls to remind the parents to come to the meetings, to, or like to also have like the meetings that they do, and then also to do like the house visits.
Right.
And that's what I wanna ask you, like,
Wanted to thank you for spending time with her, and I know she shared with me that you sat and saw all the call logs and the way they identified the kids, and for you to, as a board member, to spend that time, it was, you know, she works really hard, and she really cares about it, so I just wanna say thank you. I know that's not an answer to your question, but, I think we hear you, but it's not something we could respond to right now, but, you know, I think you're asking us to explore possibly more people or.
yeah, because I know when it comes to also adding new programs, a lot of money, and it's like their salary, benefits, stuff, and then you get it, but like she did say a good alternative, like, oh, we don't, she's like, if we can't get a specialist, maybe another attendance clerk, because she says the attendance clerks at each high school, like, they have their own set of duties, so sometimes they don't have enough time to make those extra phone calls, and she says those extra phone calls that remind the parents, she said that that can help out so much, and we could reach out to more parents as much as we can to get that more attendance from
Yeah.
every kids that are struggling.
And I think that's part of our goal, as I had mentioned, you know, attendance is going to be a focus for us. So when we sit down with all of the stakeholders, which would include, you know, site level as well as administration and obviously ed services and business services, is really kind of strategize how we can. So we need to kind of do a root cause analysis of what's working, what's not working, and just figure out how can we improve attendance as our goal, and then what is it going to take to do that. So, I mean, that is something that we'll be doing when hopefully our new director of pupil services will be brought on. Yeah. A lot of planning over the summer, yes, because a lot of logistics, and we want to make sure that we can hit the ground running and, you know, keep our parents updated with information and kind of get their year started off correctly on process and procedures, how to report absences, what are absences, and what does that look like from the parent side. So we're going to be strategizing a lot of that and hopefully get that information out to our parents. But that will be part of a conversation for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Diane, I have a question.
Yep.
We're going way back.
Oh, God.
on-
Like decades or just a couple
LCAP
years?
Budget one.
Okay.
The Scholar Plus.
Oh.
It's a large dollar amount. How many students do we have?
Oh, the Scholar Plus is Joe's budget. He'll be happy to talk about that. Yeah. The Scholar Plus on here, on the
Yes,
budget?
yes.
That is the technology. Okay, excuse me, but yes, it's a technology budget. So that's, if you would
Okay.
like to,
Speaking different things, I think his question is how many students, 125 is about what we have.
125?
Not that many there right now,
no,
but you're talking about the Scholar Plus online.
no.
Scholar Plus for credit recovery, and we have SOLA for.
Yeah, one is for the high academic achievers, right? And
Scholar Plus Online Learning Academy, which is
Okay.
A2G.
yeah, that's A to G.
Program. I think is that what you're referring to? And then
Yes.
he has a network called Scholar Plus, which he maintains, and a bunch
And a
of.
budget.
Okay, no, that's not.
Is
the
that
one.
what-
We have.
Okay. Is that what you were asking about here?
I'm asking about the high achieving students.
Okay,
that-
all right.
that,
And then we have a Scholar Plus online program for kids who are trying to do credit recovery at their site. So I think you're talking about the first
Okay.
one, the high achieving academic one.
Yes, about 125, you say?
That's the max that they have based on the number of teachers we have there. And I think currently they're at,
It's like in your budget.
exact number 92, or you can look it up. It's,
I'm sorry.
The Scholar Plus
yeah,
enrollment,
So
Oh,
SOLA.
it's,
it's lower this year,
I
but,
have it open.
we had a big increase, as you know, in COVID when so
Yeah.
many kids chose to not return, and then it slowly tapered off.
123 was the
Yeah,
no pass this
123
year.
was the pass,
Okay.
but 125 is the traditional cap there.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to the budget, that's the budget line item on that Scholar
I was,
Plus.
but
But you're just clarifying,
the real question was what
that-
Mr.
okay,
Bruff
got
was
it.
saying.
Important clarification that one change that was in the independent study rules was that we have to provide that opportunity should kids want it. You guys approved that board policy last month. But another caveat to that is if kids aren't doing well, we have a responsibility to monitor them and remove them if they're not being successful in that program. So that number moves quite a bit,
Okay, okay.
and that's a recent change in
Oh, okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you, sorry, Diane.
No, that's okay. When you said
Okay.
budget, and I'm Scholar Plus, I'm going, oh, that's our technology
Don't
budget.
forget our last picture, because they're.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right, yes.
And so, and I kind of had, kind of to piggyback on the question that was asked. So in the request for the could they create like a hybrid type like position in that situation where if they're doing, the duties could be like one that's managed and shared so that that goal is accomplished, you know what I mean? Where you can avoid the high cost of one, but at the same time, it's kind of like, hey, you can help in between the gaps. And that's kind of leading to what my other question would be. So is there any, like site discretionary funds? So let's just say, for example, what high school was that? Where that you shadowed?
No, it was at, the students.
The district
Oh, so-
level.
oh, it's a district
They make
level,
home
okay.
visits for all of the schools.
Okay, got it, okay, and so I guess then my question, and I thought it was maybe at a high school, do they have, a budget that's kind of generated by their UDPs so that they can figure out, hey, maybe we need this? And it might be something that Paris needs that Liberty doesn't.
Right.
But Liberty might have, you know, a pool of cash that says, hey, you know what, we have this discretionary funds that we can add to one of these existing programs or, you know, create something different and new that they have. And I don't know, like, at the end of the day, you know, the $29 million that are there.
Yep.
Is it all accounted for, or is there kind of a cushion to say, hey, you know what, this, so far, it could be a $25 million, but we have 4 million just, and that would be a big number, but I'm
Yep.
just saying, something where it's like, hey, we have something that we can play with to, let's just say, if there was a program that got started, and you're like, this is working really well, but we're gonna run out of money.
Yeah.
So that we can tap into it to maintain it, to make sure, you know, maybe it's a tutoring course, and maybe the kids start saying, hey, you know what? This is working really well for me. They tell their friends get on board, and, you know, maybe their kid, they were struggling, whatever. Is there something like that? Do we have?
Well, I will defer to Candace on the discretionary pots of money, because that's not my lane, and nor do I even want to go near that.
But within the
I'm
LCAP,
very sure.
yeah.
Well, I think there's always opportunities to, you know, add positions as needed, and I think that's through our feedback sessions. You know, this is certainly one of them. So as we're planning for next year, as attendance is a focus for us, and so, like I said, when we get all of our partners in the room and we can have this conversation about, okay, if this is our goal, is to increase, you know, student attendance, because there's so much that's tied to that as far financially, and then what is it going to take, and what does that look like? And so I think that's going to just be a bigger conversation with more people in the room to really determine the root cause of why aren't kids coming to school? What is the reason? How can we support that? How can we get, you know, kids to school and participate, engage, and complete? And so that would be on the table. I mean, certainly, I wouldn't say that that's something that might be the final thing that we get to, but I think there's probably some steps that we can look at, and that being one of them.
Because I know that if, you know, if you create something, you're gonna take it from somewhere else, because there's limited
Yes,
funds.
yes,
You know what I mean? But at the
Yep.
same time, you know, I like to think that local is
yeah,
important. That, you know,
Yeah.
not all of it, but that they
Yep.
have a chunk that they can say, hey, you know what? If we have this many UDPs and they generate this much money into the LCAP.
Yep. Yes.
You know, that we put a price tag on that number and just say, hey, you know what? You guys have, you know, 700 students.
So,
That
yeah.
qualifies this, and, you know, we're gonna
Yep.
give you $50 or $100, you know,
Yep.
for every student you have.
Yep.
To get this cash, and then you guys figure out how you can best serve that population. I know sometimes you can't do it because they're blended in everywhere.
Yeah.
But just something, because it
Yep.
could be something that is an attendance thing.
An
And maybe
incentive.
there's something, you know, you have a creative principal, a creative ASB person that says, hey, I've got an idea. This is what I wanna do, da-da-da-da. This is what it'll probably cost, and they can say, hey, you know what? We have this cash, you know, if that's something the staff is willing to do, if it benefits, you know, it
Yeah.
spreads throughout the culture and the campus, then let's do it. So it would
Okay.
at least be hopefully advocating for something like that, if it's not in the budget, to see if we can do something like that, because every site's gonna be unique and different.
Yeah, they are, yes.
And, you know, it would be nice, I know, for administrators to at least get cash that they can say, whoa, like, you know, there are strings to a certain degree, but not, you know what I mean? It's like, these kids generated this
Yep.
extra money.
Yep.
You know, use it to serve those kids, to incentivize those kids. And it was kind of like going back to the CTE stuff, you know, field trips. You know,
Yeah.
maybe they know, hey, you know what, the culinary kids over here at Paris are doing a great job, or it's the media kids at Heritage, or, you know,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But they have that cash to say, hey, you know what, we've got this extra cash, and maybe it's not pulled because of the UDP thing, but there's just cash that say, hey, you know what, we're gonna spend this so that you guys can do that, and gives them that flexibility, and no concern for the parents having to pay extra out of their pocket, just kind of like, hey, we think that's a worthy cause, a worthy program, we'd like to award you guys with this, you know,
Yeah.
use it, and let us know if it was something that was beneficial, and go from there.
Yep. I think that's something that we can definitely include in the conversation with everybody. Because like you said, each school is going to have their own unique needs and how they're going to tackle the increased, you know, attendance. So that's certainly something that we'll consider. And we'll be more than happy to bring that back once we get everybody on board. I know we're getting ready to wind down and everyone's going on vacation, but it's a short-lived vacation. So we'll be ramping up, you know, looking at how we're going to start the year. And that is a focus goal for us, is increase attendance. So certainly those ideas, we'll certainly, you know, bring those forward with the group.
Yeah, and it
Yep.
could be, you know, DLAC or ELAC things.
Oh, yeah.
Involving, so just
Yep.
something that just will revitalize the community, say, hey,
Yep.
we've got a cool, fun event, get them involved.
Yep.
That way, maybe the parents have an incentive piece to say, hey, you know what, do this, that, and the other, and, you know, we can do this, and, you know, they see it, their kids benefiting
Yeah.
from the experience, and so.
I think it might be interesting to see when we do a root cause, why the kids are not coming, because there's going to be a plethora of different reasons why they're not coming. And then incentives might not be the right one for, you know, one family, but it might be for another. So when we do that analysis, we'll be more than happy to share that with you, because part of the phone calls that the ladies make is really kind of ask them. This is one of the edicts that Dr. Rao, our previous board member, you know, shared with us last year, is, you know, why we need to find out why our kids are not coming to school. And once we know that, then we can, you know, start embedding some supports in for those.
On that, with my meeting with Dr. McNair today, that's the street, what was it, the street data?
Okay, there
I like that, and that's
Yeah.
like really, really
Yes,
important,
yep.
because it's not, you know, ivory tower, it's boots on the
Yes,
ground.
yes.
Specific area, this is what we
Yep.
need, this is what we gathered, this is what they want, how can we make it work?
Yeah.
Research really guiding our work right now.
Yeah, that was really cool, and she
Yeah.
brought that to my attention, I really.
Yep.
thought that
Because
was
a lot
really
of
cool.
what we think might work, we're not the parents living in the community. They have different issues, different needs, different challenges, barriers. So we just need to find out what those are to be able to address them and move forward. Yep. But we'll
thank you.
definitely be including that, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other final questions? Again, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. If you have any other thoughts or ideas, you're welcome to just give us a call, email, or whatever's going to work. And then, so just June 21st will be our approval date. Okay? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane, and all the other presenters, Mr. Ruff and Mrs. McNair, and all of you. There's just a few of us here. Yes, Charles, okay. At this time, we're still on 9.1, so are there any other public comments? Which there's no public here other than us. Okay. Mr. Bennett, you have a statement there.
We have not received any public comments from people wishing to address this subject, or there were no requests to address the board of trustees.
Okay. Okay, the public hearing regarding the local control accountability plan and annual update for 2023-24 is now closed at 6:46 p.m. We'll need a motion and a second to receive for review and consideration as part of the first reading of the local control and accountability plan and annual update for the 23-24 school year. This will be a manual vote. This will not be electronic vote. There's a,
We already took the motion in the second.
okay, so we just need a vote, decorum, so we'll go with Trustee Nelson.
Sorry, what is this vote for?
This is to close the meeting, receive,
Oh, just to close it?
yeah.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, trustee Nelson. Trustee Campos.
Aye.
Trustee Vallejo.
Aye.
Trustee Garcia, who's absent, and myself, trustee Stafford, aye. Upon a vote being taken on 9.1, it passes 4 in favor with 1 absence, or 4-0. So we don't count the absence. Okay. We'll now go to 9.2, is public hearing regarding adoption of the 2023-24 district budget. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the 2023-24 district budget?
So moved.
Trustee Nelson.
Second.
Trustee Vallejo. The public hearing regarding the 2023-24 district budget is now open at 6:48 p.m. Business Services will provide a presentation at this time. Okay.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you all. You heard from our counterparts, our wonderful counterparts in educational services on the local, basically the local control part. As Mr. Campos said, you love when things are locally controlled. That's been the case for about a decade now. Mimi and I will be talking about just a high-level overview of the rest of the budget. It's sort of the given things, the salaries and benefits, utilities, that sort of thing. But yeah, like Diane mentioned, this is the public hearing. You will be then adopting the budget on June 21st. We won't have a presentation then, and Mimi and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. So we're going to break this into 2 parts. Probably ours will be a lot shorter than educational services because it's not the fun part. They have the fun part. But I'm going to cover the California state budget, and Mimi will cover the district budget. You all likely know that on May 12th, the governor released his May revision to the proposed budget for 23-24. Since his proposal in January, state revenues have softened from 22.5 billion the deficit, not the revenues, have softened. The deficit has increased. One of the concerns statewide is the postponement of the personal income tax and corporation tax revenues until October. What that means is an estimated being the key word there, 42 billion are not due to come in until fall. So while we will likely have an on-time, state budget, we don't have that yet, and I'll go into that in a minute. It won't be super concrete until those October revenues come in. So there'll be a lot up in the air. And I don't mean to stand up here and be doom and gloom, but I want to be very transparent about what we're looking at in the state budget so that local district decisions can be made accordingly. So as I have up there, due to significantly less revenue than that was estimated in January and the May revision. The Proposition 98, which is the education share of the budget, has been reduced between January and May. I have a slide where I'm going to talk about that. And then I guess one piece of good news is the proposal increases the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, to LCFF and to my friends back there in special education. The COLA applies to special ed as well, from 8.13, which is what it was in January, and our second interim to 8.22%. So that's just a high-level overview. I stole a few slides from School Services of California, and so I wanted to really show the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee differences between January and May. And so there's not a whole lot of differences, bless you, Mr. Bennett, in 21, 22, and 22, 23. Remember, Prop 28 always covers, did I say 28? I meant 98. Prop 28, something else. Prop 98 covers a 3-year span. And so I wanted to focus on 23, 24, and you can see that reduction between January and May. And you can see that there on the last part of the slide. Diane mentioned I would probably talk about attendance, and that shows that she knows me well, or that she looked at the presentation I shared with her in advance, one of the two, or probably both. So we always show this Prop 98 growth slide provided to us in, I think, the most reader-friendly format from School Services of California. But what it does, what it highlights this year, although the minimum guarantee has definitely, plateaued overall, we have seen a large increase in recent years, primarily since the inception of LCFF. And remember, we were getting gap funding, to get to that target. But conversely, student attendance, and this will be statewide, this is not at the district level, but student attendance has declined 10% over the same time period. So I'm glad to know, and of course I'm not hearing it tonight for the first time, but I'm glad to know one of the major goals of educational services is to figure out, what is it called, the street talks? Street data of why our kids are not coming to school, because as Mr. Campos said earlier, and I think you, Ms. Vallejo, also, it just drives so the vast majority of our revenue. So that's something we need to pay attention to, as do other districts throughout the state. Other districts are also experiencing declining enrollment, so they're sort of getting, hit double on that cliff there. We are a growing district, but our students are still coming at a lower yield rate than they have in the past. And nothing could be more true than the statements that I heard earlier, than what works for one school site may not work for another school site. I know personally I went on a little mission talking to principals early on in the fall, and Dr. Milosavljevic was able to do some great things. Their attendance is lower than they have been historically, but it is higher than, and it always has been, than higher in the district. So we've got to find what works at each school. So that's just a little aside. Another thing I wanted to highlight here is, we just have changing assumptions that we're dealing with at the district level because of the changing assumptions at the state. So again, this highlights the difference between January and May for COLA and for Proposition 98. So I've focused on the decline in Proposition 98, but an increase in COLA, and that might not reconcile to all of us. And so I want to make sure I make it really clear that COLA is not derived from state revenues. It's a condition based on certain factors that when the state then declares what the statutory COLA is, usually in the late spring. And so we sort of need to separate that notion of COLA being derived from how the state is doing financially. Prop 98 can and did go down, while COLA is now fixed, at least the statutory COLA for next year. So I just wanted us to make sure we're keeping that in mind as well. Another few key points I want to highlight from the May revision is two pieces on our block grants. So the arts, music, instructional materials, discretionary block grant, actually I just saw a new acronym, they made that into an acronym. The governor's budget proposes a $1.2 billion reduction in the $3.5 billion in one-time funding that was in last year's enacted budget. So he'd already proposed that in January. In May, his proposal would increase that reduction to $1.78 billion, sweeping the remaining unallocated portion. And so he's doing that as well as the Learning and Recovery Emergency Block Grant in order to be able to fully fund COLA with Prop 98 decreasing. I didn't put the percentage there, but essentially if the governor's plan goes through, our arts and music block grant money would be reduced by 50%. And that's hard because we were already allocated that. We've already built plans on that. I mean, that came before the board. And then we have our Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, and the governor's plan proposes to reduce that funding by $2.5 billion from $7.9 billion. And so that's a decrease of $32 million. That's $5 million to this district. That the plan that Mr. Bruff and his team talked about, that would seriously handcuff that plan, essentially cutting a year off of services for students, which, is disheartening, to think about, especially since they were already allocated. So anyway, Echoing the governor's warnings in January, in his summary, he states, should broader economic risks materialize, deeper reductions will be necessary. So what does that mean? What's still in the budgeting? I know, I'm trying not to be doom and gloom, so I appreciate you guys smiling and nodding at me. But what's still in the budgeting toolbox if revenues continue to decrease? There could be deferrals, there could be reserve account withdrawals, cost of living deficits. Some of us remember back when if COLA couldn't be fully funded, there was a deficit factor applied. And, we don't have a final state budget act, and again, we don't have those personal income tax revenues until October. So there's still a lot left to be seen there. I will make one other comment that the Legislative Analyst's Office released their outlook based on the May revise, and one of their headlines is that it is very unlikely that the state can afford May revision spending levels. So again, I don't provide that to be doom and gloom, but just to be very transparent. So where are we now? We're on the road to an enacted state budget. So we have to build our budget based on the last set of data points that we have, and that is the May revise, and that's what's highlighted in that left-hand column there. And so those are the things that I have gone over in the earlier slides. We have a Senate plan that came out, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and an Assembly plan just a few days later. Across all three plans, they fully fund COLA. As far as Proposition 98, there's different takes on that in terms of reducing the amount of one-time funding. In terms of those block grants that I mentioned in the previous slide, the Senate plan rejects the proposal for the arts and music block grant. The Assembly plan modifies that reduction to $262.2 million. Similarly, the Senate and Assembly plan differ from the governor's plan on the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. So by June 15th, we expect to have a state budget. We will not adjust our budget, our district budget, based on that, because it won't work within the timelines. Mimi will talk about our next steps in her slide, but that may be a 45-day revision like we did this year. So I don't have any pictures of students, but I did like this cartoon. I also stole this from School Services of California. I don't know, I guess that one has to be grant since it's a male grant. It's the mad scientist there balancing the budget there with, making sure we can fill up that LCFF bucket by taking from other buckets. So with that, Mimi will give the high level of our district budget. Do you want this? You want me to stand with you, or you?
No.
Okay. See, she's getting better.
Okay. So, good evening to our board, Mr. Bennett, and everyone else here. So as Candice mentioned, I'm going to be going over our district budget. During our budget development, we basically plan for the incoming year. And when we do that, we estimate our revenue and expenditures based, and as Candice mentioned, based on the information from the May revise. We also use a combination of our assumptions and projections, as well as using the historical data. So as part of our budget process, I guess it's important to look at our LCFF calculation, where we getting the sources of our revenue. So in this slide, you'll see the revenue we're getting for each student in each grade level. Our LCFF revenue has different components, which is we start with the base grant. We added the COLA, which is we're projecting 8.22%, and this is actually in 23-24. And then for grade 9 to 12, we have the grade span adjustment. And then from that, we have the total base grant for each student. And from there, we add the supplemental and concentration grant, which is based on our unduplicated pupil counts. And to answer the question about the dollar amount, the breakdown of the supplemental revenue or supplemental grant and concentration. For 23-24, we have the supplemental concentration at 17.2 million, and the supplemental grant. The concentration is 12.6 million. So that's the breakdown of those two grants for 23-24. And we're using for our unduplicated pupil percentage, we're at 71.12%. So, and as I mentioned, in developing our budget, this is our 10-year historical trends and projections. So we have the enrollment data here, the percentage of enrollment to our ADA and our ADA on each year. Beginning, I think it's 2016 to 17. And then we included the current year. The current year is also here, which I forgot to mention that in developing our budget, we also work on our estimated actuals, basically estimating our revenue and expenditures on how much we're gonna, and how much revenue and expenditures when we close the current fiscal year. So we have, that's why you're gonna, all throughout the presentation, you're gonna see a data also for the current year. So we have the proposed budget for 23-24 and the two subsequent years. So this is our multi-year projection assumption summary. So you'll see that we use different rates of COLA, which we have 8.22% for the current year, and projected those rates for the 2 out years. We also projecting our enrollment. We have a projection of, not actually, the 22-23 is the actual enrollment, and the 23-24 and the 2 out years, the projection of enrollment. So in 23-24, which is our proposed budget for next year, we are projecting an increase of enrollment at 5% based on the information that Candice gathered from our feeder schools and also the current information that we have. And we're actually use a conservative approach in projecting our enrollment for the next 2 years at 3%. So with that projection, we have, it also shows there the actual ADA for the current year and the projected ADA for the next 3 years. And for our unduplicated percent, which we use in calculating our supplemental and concentration grant. So in the current year, we're at 71.38%. In calculating this, we use the rolling 3-year average. So basically, we look at the current year and the last 2 years. And also in this slide, you could see the STRS rate and the PERS rate, which we also use as a data we use for our developing our budget in our multi-year projection also. So with all these assumptions here, here's the data. It's actually not the final number, the number that we generate from that assumptions and projections. So as I mentioned, that we also look at our current year, which is our estimated actuals, and look at also our expenditures and make sure that we capture everything which we think, where we think we would spend through the end of the year. And for our projected budget, the assumption that we use, the projection of enrollment, the ADA projection, so it's all embedded in here. So this is actually the number that came up from that assumption. We could see that expenditures are going up every single year. We have from the current year, we have that ending fund balance that we are using for 23, 24. And other, as far as expenditures are concerned, then we have increases, and we factored in increases in salary, increases, step and column, increase in all cost, health and welfare, the fixed cost and all that. It's all included in our projection for our proposed budget for next year. The same way with expenditures in the 2 out years, which is 24, 25, and 25, 26. And as you can see, we have the ending fund balance there, which we also are, we have the 6% reserve cap that we are adopting for the district. So that is all, and that one is the financial data. And for our next steps, that so the board will open for public hearing to receive input on the district budget, and the final budget will be presented on June 21st this year, 2023, and the district adopted budget and the LCAP will be reviewed by our COE, and if there's any changes in the enacted budget, then we will present the 45-day budget revision. And if you have any questions for me. Yes.
6% is what we're putting aside in that's our reserves.
Yes.
Do we have a total, on what is in the reserves account?
I know that for the, it's about 12%, because 6% of expenditures, it's a 12, I have one. It's
Campos, is
12
your-
million.
Yeah, so the
About
total
12 million.
reserves, if we're looking at the budget year, because we gotta pick a column to look at. So if we look at the budget year, the total reserves is the total ending balance. So of the total ending balance is the 16.2 million. That equates to 7.62%. You all have a board policy, 3% is the minimum from the state that you would like to maintain 6%. And then you, anything between 6 and 10, we can assign for things that, we, know about, a textbook adoption or something like that. Anything above that, which we're not above that, this year you would have to commit, or am I confusing commit and assign again?
No, it's
No,
a
I
year
did
fund.
I did it right. Okay, sometimes I do it backwards. So anyway, it's 1.62% difference that would be
Yes.
above the 6%. Is that your question?
Well, yeah, so, well, kind of, I guess, just from my understanding, so that ending amount, is that something that we're sitting on, or that's something that immediately you start into the next year's budget? So I
Yes.
was thinking reserve kind of like as a rainy day, should things get tight, and we're not meeting our obligations or whatever, then we have collective bargaining, with the bargaining, and all these other things going on, that we would have to tap into it, it's kind of like a savings, so that's.
Everything you said is accurate. So it's both of those things. So it's that whole laundry list of possibilities, rainy day, tap into if Prop 98 goes down and we have a deficited COLA, let's just say as an example. But it's also, let's say we don't have to touch it and the budget is, let's say Mimi is exactly right in all her projections, but she's gonna be, she'll be really close. That 16.22, if you look up to the top of the next column, becomes the beginning balance. So it's both of those things. And then you bring in the new, subtract the new expenditures, you know.
Yes, and your maintenance now, it's relatively the same.
Yes,
24, 25, we spent 2 million more, but.
Yeah.
Or 2 million, we got 2 million less,
but we have more revenues. And so you see we're remaining really stable. I'm sorry I'm cutting in on all of your portion of the presentation, or, our estimated actuals, you can see we have a higher ending balance, but we have we're spending down a lot of those remaining one-time funds in this last year, and, yeah.
So I think it's about 12 million. The 6% is about 12 million.
Okay. Any other?
No?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just want to, since, I have sort of the mic, this lady here works extremely hard. If you drive by here any weekend or late night, she works an obscene amount of hours. She made it look like it's not a whole lot of work to put that together, but I just want to acknowledge you for how much work went into that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any public comments? Okay.
We have received no public comments from people who wish to address this subject.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it, okay. Okay, the public hearing regarding the 2023-24 district budget is now closed at 7:12 p.m. Okay. No, we have something else. You have to vote. Is there a motion to receive for review and consideration? Oh, we do? When do we do that? Okay. There'll be an electronic vote. Please vote. Nine point 2 is 4 in favor, 1 absence. Our next item is 10.1, which is adjournment, special meeting of the Board of Trustees for June 5th, 2023. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting of the Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Trustee Nelson and Trustee Campos. You can vote electronically. We have 4 in favor with 1 absence. The meeting is now adjourned at 7:13 p.m. Okay, so we're going to move into the next meeting. Steve, don't go anywhere. Okay. Yes, everybody join the CMI meeting? Okay. All set? Okay. At this time, I'm going to call the California Military Institute Special Board Meeting to order at 7:14 p.m. I'm going to ask for a roll call to determine a quorum. Trustee Nelson?
Here?
Trustee Campos?
Here.
Trustee Garcia is absent. Trustee Vallejo?
Here.
And myself, Trustee Stafford. We have established a quorum. We'll go now to 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on non-agendized items. Are there any public comments on non-agendized items?
No public comments.
We'll go to 4.1. This is a public hearing for the California Military Institute's Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the California Military Institute's Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24?
So moved.
Trustee Nelson.
Second.
Trustee Vallejo. The public hearing regarding the California Military Institute's Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24 is now open at 7:16 p.m. Ed Services will provide a presentation at this time. Mr. in the list? Oh, okay. Okay.
Good evening, President Stafford, board members, Superintendent Bennett, and Cabinet. I promise to be brief. It definitely feels like an interview right before lunch, and panel members would like you to finish briefly, so I'll do my best. Working with Diane Martin over from Ed Services, did a wonderful job, by the way. We wanted to present the LCAP to you for the last couple of months, if you recall, and we went into great detail about many of the successes and challenges. So tonight we'll wrap it up, and it'll be brief. It won't be as long. I think we skipped one. There we go. So the goals, LCAP goals are identical. They have not changed. Goal 1 continues to be to ensure that our students will attain proficiency in English language arts and math. Goal 2 continues to be graduating from high school, prepare for college or career. Goal 3, of course, student safety and positive learning environment. And Goal 4, we want to make sure those connections between parents and school are very, very strong. And so our LCAP is based on these particular goals. Action 1.1, we spent a lot of emphasis on literacy. I shared some of the data with you, some of the concerns we've had with students coming in to our school. So we utilized our funds to buy books that students will want to read. We have an incentive in the library where students can come in, put in a coin, and grab a book free of charge as an incentive. That's been a great success. I want to emphasize Avid Tutors that we deployed throughout campus. They're also helping in math classrooms as well. That's been a huge success for us. 1.2, targeted supports. We want to, of course, incentivize and engage our students. And so we had a lot of extracurricular events and also funding robotics and band and after-school celebrations to get students engaged. Needless to say, instructional technology is a huge component of what we do. We want the best for our students and our staff in their hands. Working with the technology department, we always ensure that all the Chromebooks are up to date. We refresh them every year. Funds are assigned for that. In fact, our teachers also had their MacBooks refreshed as well with the latest models so that they can serve our students. Moving on to goal number 2. Needless to say, students need to get to school, and so part of our funding to provide opportunities to our students to learn is getting them to school, and so busing and transportation is very important. But we also have late busing, and that's for students who are taking part in those after-school events that we want them to be part of, like band, like robotics, like tutoring, and so on and so forth. Parents can't always pick up their kids, and so these buses allow kids to stay on campus, receive the services and support they need, and then be able to go home safely. We also deploy the 5-star system, which is an incentive system, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, and I think you've seen it on campus as well, where we can scan student IDs, and that's one of the ways we've actually been able to help with attendance. It allows us to even have more accurate, timely attendance. 2.2, post-secondary options. We want to provide more AP opportunities to our students. Concurrent enrollment has been very successful at CMI. Students are able to get college credit. Of course, Project Lead the Way, biomedical and engineering pathway is very successful. This year, for the very first time, I was able to collaborate with the Loma Linda School of Medicine, and our students actually had a field trip where they actually got to see cadavers for the very first time, and it was many of them are choosing the medical pathway now as a result of this visit. So we definitely try to increase this exposure to colleges and universities. 2.3, our kids need to go out there and see what's available to them. So College Fair Day was a huge success. We have used funds to help our students and their parents fill out FAFSA. Bilingual assistance for that was very important to us. We received an award again this year, second year in a row, for highest FAFSA completion in the county for our school of our size. And of course, we had a successful Avid Career Day. You'll be surprised how many students leave high school and they don't have a resume, or don't know how to create one, or don't know how to go through a mock interview. And so we do all of this for our students to try and prepare them, give them practical skills. Moving on to the next goal, 3.1. The data indicated that our students were coming back and not sure how to relate to one another. There was some, bullying incidents here and there, and so we used our funding to help students to learn how to get along, how to resolve conflict in a positive, proactive manner. And so anti-bullying types of presentations, classroom visits, motivational speakers, Project Anew that you guys got to see firsthand was really successful at school. Moving on to 3.2, targeted intensive support services. We worked a lot on providing support through small groups. It's great to have that tier 1 support for all the students, but sometimes more targeted support was needed. Counselors and social workers were instrumental in providing that. Moving on to 3.3, incentives. That was huge this year, and was a great success at our school. Just reminding students that, hey, if you reach this goal, good things will happen. And so that's what we're able to do this year with a number of different areas. ASB was really, really instrumental. Where Everybody Belongs is the same type of engagement, but at lower grades for our middle school students. Link Crew that helps our 9th graders feel like they're at home, buddies them up with a friend with a higher grade level. And then, of course, supporting our athletics. We know from parents that they want their kids engaged, and we know that research is clear. If kids are coming and doing sports at school, they're doing better in class as well. And then finally, 3.4, we are using our LCAP funds to pay for our library clerk, to support our students, campus safety officer, and our athletic trainer. And then the last goal, 4.1, I shared some incredible data with you last time that our parental involvement increased even more by approximately 41% even this year. And we're very proud of that. We're very proud of the work our community liaisons do. Michelle does an outstanding job at CMI. She's like the face of CMI now. I'm sure you've met her and seen her. And on top of that, we're using our funds to educate our parents about how to be better parents. Part of what Ms. Raines was saying in terms of increasing attendance in CMI was specifically that, educating our parents on the importance of their children being at school and learning. And it isn't just academic, because we have other supports that they can't get unless they are at school, free meals and so on. So that's where our funding is going, and I will close it there unless there are additional questions. Okay, thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Principal Milosevic. Okay, where are we at here? So the public hearing regarding the California Military Institute's Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24. Well, we've opened that. I'm on the wrong section here. Okay, are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay. So the public hearing regarding the California Military Institute's Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2023-24 is now closed at 7:25 p.m. Please vote. I guess we kind of did that out of order. Okay. Still confusing. Okay. Okay, we'll now go to 4.2, a public hearing regarding, oh, I'm sorry. 4.1 passes 4 in favor with 1 absence. Okay. Okay. 4.2, the public hearing regarding adoption of the 2023-24 California Military Institute budget. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the 2023 2023-24 California Military Institute's budget.
So moved.
Trustee Nelson. Trustee Campos. The public hearing regarding the 23-24 California Military Institute budget is now open at 7:26 p.m.
And I'm back.
Business services, once again. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is the financial information or the, for CMI. So it's the same, kind of like if you could recall the slide from the district presentation. So we broken down with the sources per students. Per student that we receive revenue, we have the base and then the COLA, and then additional supplemental and concentration grant. And if you notice that the dollar amount for each grade is a little bit higher than the district because of the supplemental and concentration. They're at, for next year at about 91% UPP. And these are the assumptions we use in developing their budget, CMI budget. We projected the enrollment, and that is at 92% ADA 2 enrollment, and unduplicated percentage at 83.3 in 23-24, and then 90.15% on the next year, and so it's about averaging to 90% for their unduplicated pupil count, and that is why they get more dollar per student because of the higher UPP. So the base is the same as the district. It's just that the supplemental and concentration grant is higher. So we also use the same COLA as the district uses, and the same STIRS and PERS rate. So these are the projected revenue and expenditures. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, that we look at the estimated actuals also. We look at the current year and current year revenue and expenditures. And for the proposed budget, the 23-24, we have all the projected revenue based on the enrollment that we projected in that year. The expenditures also, it's all in here, and we use the same assumptions with embedded in the expenditures are the stipend column increases, salary increases, increases in other costs, the health and welfare costs and all that. And these are all our projection for the current year, the proposed budget for next year, and the 2 out years. And then you could see all the ending balance in there.
I noticed there was no percentage on, for the total ending balance and how much it is of the budget. And I also noticed that, I also noticed that we're deficit spending for the next 3 years, for this one. Is there a particular reason why we're in the red for the next 3 years? And or do we need to get down to a certain level? Is that my question?
Yes, so the CMI budget is kind of like different from the district. It's a combination of, well, the numbers you're seeing is a combination of sort of unrestricted and restricted revenue. So if you look at the 22-23 estimated actuals, you see that the other revenue is for $4 million. That because we receive, in this year, we received the Learning Recovery in Arts and Music grant. But because that's a one-time, we have to remove that from the following year. But if you look at the ending fund balance of 8 million, all this unspent balance in there, it's all in the 8 million. Now it's the beginning balance for the next year. And because all those, whatever the unspent balance from the one-time revenue, we start spending that in 23, 24. That is why you could see that expenditures are high in that year. And every single year, expenditures are, higher because of the factors I mentioned, salary increases, step and column, and all that.
I totally get that, but I'm saying salary increases and everything are ongoing, whereas the other revenues are the ones you're talking about are one time. Are we just spending down those one-time dollars essentially over these next 3 years? That's where our
Yes.
that deficit spending comes into play, is we're using up that one-time monies.
Combination of two things. It's the ending fund balance from the current year, the estimated actuals, and the one-time revenue.
Okay.
Now, your question, and we together, but I'll take the fall for that. We overlooked that last line. I don't know if you saw me on my phone doing the quick calculation. So for the current year, that's about 31%.
Okay.
The final year, as we spend that down, it goes down to 13%. And I can't remember if you said or not, Mimi, so forgive me. CMI doesn't have the same reserve requirements. Technically, their requirement is 0, but that's not safe.
No, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
And the smaller the budget, the larger the reserve you want to be able to react. So they're looking really healthy by their last.
Okay, I just saw the deficit spending for 3 years, and it got me a little bit worried, but I was wanting to make sure that there was a reason for that, so, okay, thank you.
And as Mimi said, it is a little deceiving because we separate out restricted funds for the district, whereas the charter school, it's all within one fund.
Any other questions?
Any further questions? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If you still had other slides.
No.
Yeah.
You didn't have the next step slide?
Yes, we have the next, yeah, thank you. Oh, okay, so for the next step, the board will open for public hearing to receive input for CMI's budget. And the final budget will also be presented on June 21st. The CMI adopted budget and the LCAP will be reviewed by our COE. And if there's any changes after the enacted budget, then we'll present that changes on our 45-day budget revision.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's gonna be the last line.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay. We'll go straight to please vote. Well, I think I was going to switch it because it seemed out of order. Okay. The public hearing regarding the 2023-24 California Military Institute budget is now closed at 7:34 p.m. Just seems out of order. You can vote now electronically. We have 4 in favor with 1 absence. Okay. Last item, 5.1, is adjournment. Special meeting of the California Military Institute for June 5th, 2023. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting of the California Military Institute?
Second.
Trustee Nelson, Trustee Vallejo. Please vote. We have 4 in favor with 1 absence. The meeting is adjourned at 7:35 p.m.